The Health Minister, Nicola Roxon, joins us live in our Canberra studio to explain the latest protection measures. Nicola Roxon, thanks for being there.
It's a pleasure.
OK, why exactly have you asked the Governor-General to add swine flu to the list of quarantinable diseases?
This is a precautionary step that the government's taken. The Chief Medical Officer made the recommendation to me. We have other diseases that are already listed as quarantinable, and they give the Chief Medical Officer and then his delegate, for example, at various airports across the country, the power to take additional steps. We've added swine flu to the list. It means that if the circumstances change very quickly, that we would be able to use those extra powers if they were needed. But I do need to hasten to reassure your audience that at this stage there is no suggestion that we need to use those powers, but we don't want to be in a position if the circumstances change quickly that we are delayed for not having taken this precautionary step tonight.
It gives the government the power to detain people, is that right?
It gives the Chief Medical Officer the power to change circumstances, particularly at our airports or our ports. The most extreme of those would be, for example, isolating someone perhaps in their own home, but there are other steps that are more minor, perhaps disinfecting aircraft when they're arriving. These sorts of steps go from relatively mild to quite intrusive, and we certainly are a long way from needing to take those steps when we have no confirmed cases currently of swine flu in Australia.
It's a potentially broad power, though. When was the last time it was applied broadly in Australia?
Well, look, my understanding is that we haven't needed to use these powers. We, of course, weren't in government during the previous threats, but the powers have been put in place because we've seen in recent times an increased threat from SARS, from bird flu, but we need to make sure that the current threat from swine flu is included so that we can act quickly if circumstances need to change. I'm very pleased, though, the reports from the first day of the changed procedures at airports for flights from the Americas have shown the community to be very cooperative, and we've had no suggestion that these powers would be needed even if the alert moves to a higher level.
Yes, the WHO has raised the alert level from 3 to 4, and a senior WHO official in Britain, Professor Neil Ferguson, has said today we are clearly on track for a pandemic, and that we might expect, he's talking about in Britain here, 30 to 40% of the population to become ill in the next 6 months. Are those the sort of figures in a worst-case scenario that you're being given that could happen in Australia?
Well, I guess there are lots of figures that people could speculate about in a worst-case scenario. The real truth is we don't know the way this disease is yet going to pass on into the community in other countries around the world or in Australia. We are in the lucky situation from our geography that we have some delayed impact. We have no confirmed cases yet. Obviously, our main objective now is to delay swine flu getting into Australia and to be ready to act and contain any outbreak if we do have cases that are confirmed. It's why we're acting to make sure that the people that were on the same plane as the New Zealanders who've now been confirmed to have swine flu are being traced, are being asked if they're in good health, will be offered antivirals if they are exhibiting symptoms of flu.
These are Australians who are now back in Australia. Do you know how many of them there are?
There's 22 people that were on that same flight. Their names have now been provided to the states and territories for them to do the tracing. There's a set procedure to be followed. We expect during the course of tomorrow that we will have feedback whether any of those people were experiencing any symptoms and whether they then become cases that need to be tested.
But we do have quite a number of suspected cases already in Australia. Do you know how long it will take before we know for sure whether those are real cases of swine flu?
Yes, it's probably not correct to say that we've got 89 suspected cases. We have 89 people who have been travelling in the area who are showing some flu symptoms. It can take anywhere from a day to several days because there are 3 different steps of testing, and a person, of course, can be cleared from the first stage, then we get a result pretty quickly. If someone goes to the second or third stage, it takes us more time. It's a very complex process of the way you treat the DNA and match it up with the identified signifiers, if you like, of this disease. So really it can be as quick as several hours. It can be as long as probably 48, slightly more, if there was some difficulty with the way the sample was being used or responding.
Very briefly, those people are being isolated until we know the truth?
No, we have a number of different circumstances depending on the symptoms that people have. At this stage, my advice is that we have only 2 people that have been recommended to be in isolation in their own home, and they are cooperating. Those figures, though, I have to tell you, it is all changing very quickly. Once someone's cleared, they come off the list. We might have new people that are identified. We've had the process at our airports just in place for 24 hours, and only a handful of people have needed to have a swab taken, and only 2 of those have been asked to keep themselves in isolation for the protection of their family and friends.
OK, Nicola Roxon, we thank you for joining us. We'll have to leave you there and move on.
Thank you.